Welcome to our Backyard Brothers podcast. Today is a kind of a strange day for us because we didn't have a whole lot planned coming in, other than I'm sorry, uh, my dog just came over next to me, farted, and then left. So um,
A wonderful contribution to the podcast.
okay. So anyway, we were going to talk about some of our overreactions from last week, see if they're correct this week, and then also talk about some injuries and other things like that. And so, um, uh, let's start in just briefly about some overreactions that we talked about last week and see what they look like after 2 weeks in NFL and 3 weeks in college football, and see if they're still accurate, or if they've completely shifted. And so, does anyone want to start? And we can throw in some injury talks in here as well. We don't have to be two separate topics, but so anyone want to start about whether it's college or whether it's NFL? um, and I can start as well. And uh, we've seen three games from two teams now in the NFL. We've seen three games from the Giants and we've seen three games from the 49ers. Obviously, those two teams played on Thursday night. And those were some of the biggest overreactions, I thought, when we started. Um, and and if I could throw out something about both of them, I would say both of our overreactions from the beginning seem to be correct, in that the Giants are in a lot of trouble. They The only game that they won, they came back from 20 points down against the worst team in the NFL, and were able to win. I mean, coming back from 20 points down is impressive, but we have to keep in mind that the Cardinals are not going to win 5 games this year. And so there's that, and they have no offensive line. Whoever they play continues to just go right through that line, sack the quarterback, create a lot of pressure. If Saquon Barkley continues to miss games, you're in more trouble too. Obviously, they didn't have him on Thursday, and that was a big piece of that problem as well. And so the Giants are in trouble. 49ers continue to look like the best team in the NFL. They've won 3 games, and all three of them have been by 2 possessions or more. And so they haven't won a close game yet. They haven't been in a close game yet. And their offense looked a little less than robust on Thursday against the Giants, but they still got it done. But they continue to look like the best team in the league to me. And you talk about
Yeah,
those.
I'll respond first. So with the Giants, with the preview, I said, hey, if Barkley and the running game can get going, it opens up Daniel Jones in the passing game. And I think that would have been true if the Giants' offensive line wouldn't have been so terrible. And that's really proven what it is these past 3 games is that he doesn't have the time to do anything in the pocket. And so even with a decent running game, which is dwindling with Barkley out, they just don't have a passing game because they don't have protection. And so yeah, that's it. They have to fix that immediately in order to try to compete in the NFC East. With the 49ers, my initial reaction is like I just wasn't sold on Brock Purdy. But looking at him now, and I look at this most recent game against the Giants went after him. I saw a statistic that they blitzed on like 80% of plays, and he had a completion rate that was insane. 70% completion rate on blitz plays, and two of his 2 touchdowns were up against the blitz. In that he reacted quickly, knew exactly what to do when the blitz came, and did amazing. And so I'm starting to really get sold on Brock Purdy as a true NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I want to real quick about him and the 49ers. Brock Purdy is playing like he should have been a number one overall pick. He's playing really, really well. And it didn't take me as long as you, Dustin, to be sold on Brock. I remember watching. It was I think I said this last time. It was specifically against the Seahawks last year. I remember him just slicing the defense like he'd been playing for 13 years. It was just amazing to watch. Um, and then about I guess the Giants offensive line, there was one play last night I saw specifically, or Thursday night, um, where I don't know who it was or what happened, but the Giants did a terrible job in trying to block Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa got through and sacked Daniel Jones, I think in less than 1 second is what it looked like. It was right on the 1 yard line too. And I don't know if there was a tight end trying to match up on him, but that was not a smart idea. But whoever it was, they really botched that play, and it was just like I saw that play and I was like, "There's no point in watching this game. They're not gonna do anything against this stellar team." And so yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think the Giants are looking to be that team that had a kind of a lucky year and just dropping down really quickly. And the 49ers right now are looking like they might be a Super Bowl winning team. So I think while I have the mic, I'll talk about a couple of teams that just a thought I have. There are two teams right now in the league that have no business, in my opinion, being 0-2, and that's Vikings and the Chargers, and they're both playing each other this week. And so one of these teams is going to be 0-3 going forward, which is really dangerous going into the further into the season. And it's just amazing. I think I remember seeing a statistic that the Chargers have had zero turnovers, have scored over 50 something points, and are yet 0-2. And I don't think any team has been able to do that before. And so it's maybe they're just drawing the short stick or just being beat out by a final field goal kick or something. But it's just interesting to me that I'm surprised that both of these teams are 0-2 right now. I'm not really sure who to blame. But and now they're faced up each other. So one of these teams is going to be 0-3, and that's just not a good look for them going forward.
Yeah. Putting aside the Chargers for a second, it's easy to see why the Vikings are 0-2. The Vikings have turned the ball over like it's it's like they're paid to do it. They're really turning over the ball, putting the ball on the ground. Kirk Cousins is not throwing interceptions; it's more fumbles. Kirk Cousins had 4 touchdown passes and no interceptions against the Eagles. He played really well, but they're putting the ball on the ground again like they're paid to do it, and you can't win when you're -6 on the season on turnovers, and it's not going to happen that way, and so that's why the Vikings are 0-2, and if they continue to do that against the Chargers, they'll be 0-3. But it's the Chargers. It is a weird one that they almost. I think they're in the top 3 in points per game. They move the ball really well. Austin Eckler was out in their last game, and that was part of the reason. But yeah, the Chargers are a strange one that they are 0-2, and that hurts them. But they have to stop somebody, and they haven't done that in 2 games. Their defense just lets people go right through them like a sieve. There's no stopping, especially through the air, and that's a problem against the Vikings.
Yeah, with the Vikings, like you said, they have no problem moving the ball, but then they get into the red zone and they fumble it, and it's just things like that. And then with the Chargers, they seem to play up or down to the level of competition. They played the Dolphins, who I'll talk about later, who's one of the best teams, and again, very close game, and then again a very close game against the Titans, they'd be playing down to the Titans and playing up to the Dolphins. And so we'll see how they play against the Vikings if they play down to them in that case, since we know they're capable of playing up.
Yeah.
So then with mine, a reaction that I think is appropriate is with the Dolphins. They are playing incredible. They're 2-0, and have really shown just amazing offensive prowess, and doing great. And then defensively, they're holding up, right? They're not limiting their teams to 10 points or anything, but they're doing great. And then the other one that I would have is with the Cowboys. The Cowboys have scored 70 points so far this season. The teams they've played have scored 10 combined, right? Which happens to be both New York teams, but Cowboys are seem to be playing up, and of course, then we can talk about injuries with Trayvon Diggs as well. I want to get your reactions on those two teams.
I don't have a whole lot to add because I think you summed it up. But the Dolphins are playing great. Tua is a early MVP candidate right now already. He was early last year too, and so it's not a fluke. Uh, if anyone has any reservations about Tua Tagovailoa as a NFL caliber quarterback, that needs to be gone. The only obviously condition is his injury history, but uh, beyond that, this guy is a legitimate top tier NFL quarterback. Um, and with the Cowboys, their offense, they're scoring points, but it's easy to say, wow, look at that offense because they're scoring 70 points. And that's really not what's doing it. It's their defense. And in some cases, special teams as well, that are scoring a lot of points and getting their offense in that position. And so right now, it shouldn't be understood that their offense is what's creating a lot of this. It's a defense that's on historical pace to be the best in NFL history. Uh, what happens if Trayvon Diggs is going to miss the whole rest of the season? That may hurt some things, but I think they have so many great players that it may not do much if they only miss Diggs.
Yeah, I guess I'm being proven wrong by the Dolphins right now, and I'm okay accepting that. I remember my predictions from the beginning of the year was as long as the Jets stay healthy, which they didn't, they'll be winning the division. That was my prediction. They're not going to even get. I'm not sure if they're going to get third now because Aaron Rodgers is out. We can talk about that later. But the Dolphins have surprised me. So originally, I was saying Dolphins were getting third place after the Bills. Right now, they look like they can win the division. And so they do look really really good. It helps to have the cheetah, to throw to, and the penguin. Um, and then Tua just throwing the ball around. They look really good. The Cowboys, um, they're looking really good, but they also in at least years past, once they get to the playoffs, they don't play like the same team. And so you know, I'm not. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, they're going to go to the Super Bowl this year." I'm like, no, they look good, and maybe if they keep this up, then yeah, they maybe have a first seed. But then, as history shows, they seem to always choke in the first game they play in the playoffs. Um, this week they're playing the Cardinals, so I'm thinking they might have 50 points, scored against maybe 3 or 10. I don't know, but and so we'll see what happens there. Um, but I guess that's just my initial response reaction to what you're saying, Dustin.
I I want to push back a little bit and on something you said, and that's uh, trying to. I mean, history shows that the Cowboys have struggled in the playoffs, but every year is its own thing. You can't really say uh, that necessarily one year has to go into the next and prove that they're going to struggle in the same spot. Uh, Now, with certain players, Dak Prescott hasn't played well in the playoffs, and that may be something that you can extrapolate from. But from a team perspective, one year over the next, I don't think you can do that with a whole team performance year to year over the playoffs. With a player, I think so, but not necessarily a team. And so I'm not really looking at last year's in the last 5 years playoffs and saying that this means that the Cowboys are going to struggle in the playoffs this year. I don't think I can do that. But like you said, Dak Prescott has to prove himself in the playoffs, and I'm fine saying that. But I'm leaving it open to say that I think this could be the year that Dak Prescott plays well in the playoffs, that the Cowboys play well in the playoffs, and I'm not going to to base this year's playoff result on the last few years. And that's the same with every team. I don't, and I'm trying to temper my expectations because the 49ers have done the same thing. They haven't won a Super Bowl since 1994. But that doesn't mean that they can't win it this year. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand and respect that pushback, and and like you said, every year is different because there's a whole slew of reasons why every team is different every year. But stated, and that's mainly where I'm extrapolating from Dak Prescott. Yeah, I absolutely am. And the reason I'm saying that is the quarterback is the most important position in the game of football and has probably the most sway, usually, not all the time, but usually the most sway on how a team performs in a single game. And at least in recent history speaking, he has not done so well. And so my look at it is until he can prove to me otherwise, this team is not going to move forward. But yeah, I am basically I'm getting up from Dak Prescott mostly. The team is looking good as a whole, but until he can prove to me that he can actually, under the pressure of the playoffs, win several games, then my expectation is that they may look good until the playoffs come.
With the quarterback being the most important position, yes, it is because they touch it every single play, right? But then when you see a player like Joey Bosa or Micah Parsons who completely blows the game up, who completely nullifies the quarterback's impact on the game, saying, "Hey, quarterback, your job is going to be to hand it off because I guarantee you're not throwing it." That's where I say, hey, a really good edge rusher or a really good lineman becomes the most important position to play when they can completely nullify a quarterback's impact, like you see Micah Parsons has done, like you see Bosa has done.
Yeah. I mean, you think way back and how like the Buffalo Bills way back, we're talking late 80s, early 90s at this point, how their offense, they had a pretty good one with Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, and all that. But Bruce Smith was their best player at defensive end. Bruce Smith was the one that got them to the Super Bowl 4 times in a row because he impacted the game. He completely nullified, as Dustin said, other quarterbacks until they got to the Super Bowl, and then they couldn't win the Super Bowl 4 times in a row. But so that's where my head immediately went when Dustin said that, and thinking about the history of edge rushers and what they've done.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing at all with you. That's why I say typically they're the most important position in a single game. And then when it gets to that moment, at least historically, let's say Dak Prescott like last year is not executing very well, then it becomes Michael Parson or Joey Bosa's whole goal. The pressure's on them now to make sure that the other team is not going to score more than whatever Dak Prescott can get on the board. And so at that point, it's kind of how it shifts, and they operate under pressure a lot better than what I've seen Dak Prescott do. And so, absolutely, Micah Parsons can be a single handedly game changer, but then it would be on him and the defense to make sure that the team doesn't score more than, I don't know, 20 points or whatever Dak Prescott can get up. So anyway, that's my thought on that. So.
One more overreaction in the NFL, and then I want to talk about injuries and then move to college football. Buffalo Bills right now. First week they had Josh Allen turned it over 4 times, and all three of us said nothing's changed from last year, and that's a problem. That's why they're no longer the favorites if they continue to do that. But last week it was a flipped script. Josh Allen had 4 touchdowns, no turnovers, and he took it on himself and said that this is it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm not going to turn it over again. And do we completely erase what happened in the first week and say, okay, the Bills are back where we thought they were? Because I'm kind of on that board, but
I look at the teams they played against the Jets. Jets have a fantastic defense, and I think that really impacted Allen. The Raiders' defense is just it's not comparable, and so he was able to have the time in order to make the decisions, and his receivers are able to get open. And so I'm not disagreeing necessarily. I think that the Bills absolutely can have a great season, that Allen can change, but I don't want to overreact to him having a great game. Again, looking against the defense that he played against.
I agree with Dustin. I think that really we saw what his potential is in the game, but we've only had 2 games now, one to show what happens when he plays a really elite defense and one that shows what his potential is. And so um, my reaction is I'm proud of Josh. He's a great quarterback. He deserves what he's doing, at least in the second game. But my thought is, we've got to see what week 3 brings. And they're playing the Commanders, who I don't know. I feel like they have a good defense usually, but sometimes I don't know. I just got to see it. They're not a Jets defense, but they're better than Raiders defense. So we'll see what happens there. If he has another elite performance, then I probably would be on the same boat that you are, Scott.
Good. Well, let's talk two significant injuries. I'm sure there's more that we can talk about, but two in particular that are most likely season ending. Aaron Rodgers of the Jets after 4 snaps, um, and Nick Chubb, whose injury looks career threatening. So anyone want to start with those?
Yeah, I'll start with just with the Nick Chubb one. It's a bad injury when the TV won't replay it back for you, and that's what they didn't do. Same thing with Alex Smith's injury and things like that. I mean, Alex Smith was a little bit more intense, obviously, than the Nick Chubb's, but not by a whole lot. I mean, Nick Chubb, I found a video. I think I sent
I
it to
did
you guys
too.
as well, and I watch it. And I'm just, oh gosh, I can't watch that. I mean, it's breaking a toothpick in half is what it kind of looks like, and so rather than that's when I first saw it on the TV, my thought was that's an ACL and tear. When I saw it play back on the video, I said that's pretty much every ligament in the knee that's
Yeah.
torn in half completely, and so it's easily a season-ending injury, if not like halfway through next season or a few games in the next season. But my thought was when I first saw that is I hope not, but Nick Chubb might not play football again. That's a bad injury. That's really bad, and let alone the surgery having to be good and coming out, well. But then a lot of rehab you have to do, and even if he comes back, I don't think he'll ever be the same Nick Chubb that we saw. This was a very bad injury that's just detrimental and makes you wonder, like, what does this should we keep saying that these things just happen, or is there something that needs to be changed at all? If so, what is it? I don't know. I feel like they've done a lot to make the game safe, but maybe it's the thought that these things just kind of happen and players need to just know that risk, or what. But that's just my thought about it. Terrible injury, and if is there anything the NFL can do?
Um, to react to that, I like what the NFL is doing around concussions, around head injuries, and I think that they can do so much better. I mean, for instance, during training camp, a lot of practices, they wear different helmets that absorb impacts. They're not doing that in real life in real games because they look stupid, and the NFL cares about how it looks. Um, but when it comes to the knee is the weak point of an athlete's body. In every sport, knees are what does it, and so it's until they change the rules for it to be two-hand touch, the knee is always going to be an injury that's going to happen at every level of not only football but every single sport in the world, including non-contact sports. The knee is where things break, and I don't think anything can change around the knee because so many ACL tears are non-contact tears. You can't change the knee. I hope that they continue to do more when it comes to head and neck, and I hope that they wear the stupid helmets in games in order to protect that. And I hope that's something that trickles down to
Yeah.
every single level of football. I'd rather a player look stupid than get a brain injury and act stupid.
Yeah. You have the big old styrofoam on top of the helmet that looks really dumb, but hey, if that protects you, yeah. But talking about this, and I do want to mention something timeline wise. Nick Chubb did almost the exact same thing to his knee in college. Um, for Georgia, it was just the other way. It's kind of funny, but it's really gruesome because in college the knee bent the other way in extremely gruesome fashion. And I'm not going to share it publicly right now, but I'll send you the images. But his knee went crazy the other way, and this time it's the same knee, the left knee, that went completely hyperextended the opposite way than it did in college. And so he's now tore his knee up in two different ways. He came back from it fine in college, and so it's possible he can come back from it fine in the NFL. But this is two devastating knee injuries he's had within 5 years, and so don't know what it's going to look like there. But yeah, he has torn up this same knee in college as well, and so it's kind of tough to look at that and to like you said, they didn't replay that, but you can find the image. You don't want to see the image, but you can find it. And yeah.
I want to talk about Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. So I feel bad for Aaron Rodgers. It's really is just tough break, but at the same time, when it comes to the Jets, all off season, any sports news, ESPN, all they can ever talk about is how the Jets are going to the Super Bowl. This is the team of destiny. And it's perhaps the most New York Jets thing to ever happen, that in the third play of game, everything that they had hinged their entire hopes on is gone. And I just, I kind of, again, I don't want to laugh at Aaron Rodgers, but I laugh at the situation that ESPN and everybody else has played the Jets up as the team of destiny, and boom, it's gone.
Yep. And it's the situation itself is funny. The injury is not. And Aaron Rodgers and his doctors say that what's funny about this is they say that Aaron Rodgers could return for the Super Bowl, and it makes me laugh. But, because they're still putting that as a possibility, that the Jets, the ESPN doesn't want to rewrite their story. They want to say the Jets can still go to the Super Bowl, and if they do, Aaron Rodgers could play. So I'm like, yeah, except Zach Wilson's their quarterback, who threw 4 interceptions last week. So
if Zach Wilson leads the Jets to the Super Bowl, Aaron Rodgers can retire. He's done.
Yeah.
We got a new GOAT.
If Zach Wilson leads to the Super Bowl, I mean, I'm an alligator. I mean, it's just not going to happen. It just he's got to have more than 3 decent games in a season before you can do that. So, yeah.
Okay, and I wanted to jump over to college real quick, and talk about the Big 12. The Big 12 in particular had 2 games where they beat SEC teams last week. And so it's important to talk about. Yeah, we've talked about the SEC and the Big 10 as really good really good teams, but you have Texas beating Alabama. And that was, who knows how good Alabama is this year. They didn't look very good in the other games that they played either, but Texas beat them pretty good. And then, as just a personal plug, BYU beat Arkansas, goes into little Fayetteville and plays a really good game and beats Arkansas. But and then TCU already lost, but Kansas State I think lost. But the Big 12 looks like they have several teams that can compete. I think back in our college football preview, at least me, I think there was more than me, picked Texas in the playoff, in the 14 college playoff, and that looks like a pretty good pick at this point. But
Yeah, real quick. I mean, and I like that you go there. My thought is I'm looking at the Pac-12, and I'm sorry to kind of like not, I guess, react to what you're saying, but well, first off, the BYU win was really, really impressive. And I was excited to watch Texas beat Alabama. But the Pac-12 has 8 ranked teams right now, and it is easily the best conference in college football right now. which is no one would ever expected. And it's almost also kind of funny the situation how it's the last really year of the conference, at least so far it is. And so um they've been showing a lot of promise. But yeah, as far as the Big 12 in Texas, I mean, they had a kind of a rough showing with Wyoming after beating Alabama pretty handily. And so my question is, what's their consistency like? Can they keep that up throughout the season, or is Wyoming really actually really good? They almost beat, or they did beat Texas Tech. I think they did. Um, and so I guess I can see Texas going to the playoffs, but my concern right now is consistency. I need to see them keep doing what they did at Alabama all year long.
Yeah, thinking about the Big 12 and the SEC. The SEC is so interesting because these top tier teams, and I'll include Arkansas in there, losing a game can really derail a season, a single game. And a lot of the talk I hear, I work with a lot of diehard Arkansas fans, right? And they're kind of thinking like, man, if we go 9-3 or 8-4 this season, that's just terrible. That's just bad. And that's kind of the expectation, is that you're going to do better than 8-4, and that it's insane to think about. And I'm really looking forward to what BYU can do this season. They have perhaps the toughest schedule that they've had in a very long time. That they got to play Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Tennessee, a couple other big names they have to play, and so if they can compete really well, and say even be 10-2, 11-1, then they're absolutely worthy of being mentioned, at least in the playoff consideration.
Yeah. They play Kansas today in Lawrence, and Kansas is not the cupcake they used to be, and so Kansas is pretty good. So we'll see what happens there. But over to your Pac-12 discussion, Cody. A couple of games I want to mention, and I think you mentioned 3 weeks ago that Cam Rising needs to be back by UCLA, and he's not going to play against UCLA. And so, who knows if they're just putting us on on kind of a joke here, because Cam Rising may not play this year. Who knows? So, but he's not going to play against UCLA, and that may be an issue against a good UCLA team. But that's one thing I wanted to mention. Obviously, the big game this week. We mentioned about Colorado a couple of weeks ago, saying, "Hey, they were good. They beat TCU. We don't know how good TCU is, but talk to me if they beat Oregon." Well, that's today. They play Oregon today, and so let's find out.
Go ahead, Dustin.
Yeah, regarding Colorado, I think the whole world is watching. And this is perhaps, for these three games, have probably secured Colorado's athletic financial future for the next decade. They're going to do just fine financially. Their athletic program is going to do fine. We're going to see new stadiums, new arenas, new equipment across the entire athletics because of what Colorado's done just in 3 games. And so if they can continue um, doing well, then yeah, Colorado will become a Big 12 power. I'm excited to see it. Everybody likes prime time. Everybody wants to see him do well. And there's already discussions about, okay, where's he gonna go next? Is he gonna go coach? Is he gonna go coach at Florida State at his alma mater? Because that's obviously the next place. And so there's already all of that happening.
They're talking about going to the NFL too. Are you going to coach in the NFL? And he says, I don't want to coach in the NFL. And he gave a good reason why. He says, I can't motivate guys who make $5 million a year the way I can motivate a college student. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So my thought is, yeah, definitely with Cam Rising not being cleared to play today, there's still part of me that's thinking like, maybe someone said something to Pete and is lying, and maybe Cam still trots out there today. Just kind of hope, he probably won't. But yeah, I have a little bit more concern, of course, how is Utah's season going to look now? The game against UCLA is at home. Rice Eccles, it's a very tough place to play. The defense is suffocating. I think that Utah can still win this game, but it's going to be a lot harder. I do think Cam Rising will play this year. Absolutely. I just now I wonder it might not be until California, which is not until mid-October, because there's Oregon State next week, and then there's the bye for Utah. So I don't know. I was hoping, expecting him to see him now, but it just starts to make me wonder. I do think he'll play. Absolutely. I just don't know when exactly. I don't think it'll be before California or after whatever you know what I'm saying to say. For Colorado and Oregon, my expectation is that Colorado's going to get rolled by Oregon. They're 20-point favorite. Oregon's a 20-point favorite. Um, it's just that the way they played against Colorado State was not convincing to me that they're going to be able to beat Oregon, who's been lighting up the field. And it's also in Autzen. So it's we'll have to see. And then real quick, just a little thought: Ohio State Notre Dame plays today as well. So
Yeah, that's a big one too. Yeah. Okay. Well, next week we're shifting gears. The MLB postseason is right upon us, and so we will be talking MLB playoff preview all next week. And we're going to have our guest Bob join who talked the preview with us a few months ago. Join us for that as well. So looking forward to that, and we'll see you next week.